Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his face as he finished checking the last defense grid connection. At 20 years old, he was the youngest member of the New Terra Colony defense team. Most people thought he was too young for such important work, but Jake had proven himself many times over the past 2 years. The morning sun cast long shadows across the metal towers that protected their home. New Terra had been humanity's pride for 3 generations. Families had built lives here, far from Earth's crowded cities. Jake's own grandparents had been among the first settlers. "Jake, get down from there," called Amy Cooper from below. She stood next to her medical supply truck, her blonde hair tied back in a simple ponytail. "Your brother wants to see you at the command center." Jake climbed down the tower ladder and grabbed his tool bag. "Did Danny say what he wanted?" "No, but he looked worried," Amy replied. "More worried than usual." They walked together through the main settlement. Children played in the streets while their parents worked in the shops and farms. Everything seemed normal, but Jake noticed more security patrols than usual. The command center buzzed with activity when Jake arrived. His older brother Danny stood at the main display screen, talking with Commander Roy Carter. Danny had served in the Colonial Marines for 8 years and knew more about defense than anyone on New Terra. "Jake, good timing," Danny said without looking away from the screen. "We need your technical skills." "What's wrong?" Jake asked. Commander Carter pointed at the display. "Our long-range sensors picked up something 3 hours ago. Ships, big ones, moving toward our system." Jake studied the sensor readings. The ships were massive, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their design looked strange, with flowing curves instead of the straight lines of human vessels. "How many?" Jake asked. 12 confirmed, Carter replied. "Maybe more behind them." Danny turned to face his younger brother. "We're sending out scout drones, but their range is limited. We need someone to modify a shuttle for long-range reconnaissance." Jake understood immediately. "You want me to soup up one of the atmospheric shuttles for a deep space mission?" "Can you do it?" Carter asked. "Give me 6 hours," Jake said. "But whoever pilots it won't be coming back if those ships are hostile." "I'll pilot it," Danny said. "No." Jake shook his head. "I know the modifications better than anyone. If something goes wrong, I'm the only one who can fix it in space." The brothers stared at each other. Finally, Danny sighed. "Fine, but you follow orders out there. No heroics." Jake spent the rest of the day working on the shuttle. He removed unnecessary equipment and installed extra fuel tanks. He boosted the sensor array and added stealth plating he had been experimenting with. By evening, the small craft could fly farther and hide better than any shuttle in the colony. Amy found him in the hangar as he finished the last checks. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Terrified," Jake admitted, "but someone has to do it." "Come back safe," she said. "New Terra needs people like you." As night fell, the alien ships arrived. 12 massive vessels dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Each ship was the size of a small city, their hulls gleaming crimson in the starlight. They moved in perfect formation toward New Terra. Jake launched his modified shuttle just before midnight. He flew dark, using the planet's shadow to hide his approach. The shuttle's improved sensors gave him his first close look at the alien vessels. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Smooth curves flowed from bow to stern, and energy patterns danced along their hulls. Weapon ports lined their sides, more firepower than the entire human fleet could muster. As Jake watched, one of the ships broke formation and moved toward New Terra. A transmission came through on all frequencies. The voice that spoke was female, speaking perfect English with a musical accent. "People of New Terra," the voice said, "I am Princess Zaraketh of the Zephyrian Empire. This system belongs to our realm by ancient right. You have 24 hours to surrender your colony and submit to imperial rule. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your settlement." Jake's blood ran cold. He had heard stories of alien empires that swept through space, conquering everything in their path, but those had always seemed like distant threats. He started to turn his shuttle around when warning lights flashed on his control panel. A tractor beam had locked onto his craft. The invisible force pulled him toward the largest alien ship, despite his efforts to break free. Well, Jake muttered to himself, this is not good. The shuttle was drawn into a massive hangar bay. Jake found himself surrounded by alien technology beyond human understanding. Strange lights pulsed along the walls, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. Armed figures in flowing robes waited for him as he stepped out of his shuttle. They were tall and graceful, with silver skin and large purple eyes. Their faces showed no emotion as they gestured for him to follow. They led Jake through corridors that seemed to bend and flow like living things. The walls showed images of distant stars and alien worlds. Everything was smooth and perfect, without a single sharp edge or rough surface. Finally, they brought him to a vast chamber with a high ceiling that seemed to stretch up forever. At the far end, a figure sat on what could only be called a throne. She rose as Jake approached, and he got his first look at Princess Zaraketh. She was taller than any human, with the same silver skin and purple eyes as her guards. But where they showed no emotion, her face was alive with curiosity. She wore robes that shifted color like oil on water, and a simple crown that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. "You are very young," she said, studying Jake with intense interest. "What is your name?" "Jake Morrison," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Jake Morrison," she repeated, as if testing how the name sounded. "You modified your primitive vessel for this mission. The work shows remarkable ingenuity for someone of your years." "Thanks, I guess." Princess Zaraketh smiled, and Jake was surprised by how human the expression looked. "Tell me, Jake Morrison, why did your people send a child to spy on our fleet?" "I'm not a child," Jake said. "I'm 20 years old." The princess's eyes widened in what seemed like genuine surprise. 20? By our standards, you are barely out of infancy, yet you accomplished this feat of engineering?" She gestured toward the hangar where his shuttle waited. "This is most interesting." She walked closer, and Jake fought the urge to step back. "Tell me about your colony's defenses." "No." The simple word hung in the air between them. The princess's guards moved closer, but she held up one hand to stop them. "You refuse to answer?" she asked. "Yes." "Even though I could have you tortured until you speak?" Jake met her purple gaze steadily. "Yes." For a long moment, the princess said nothing. Then she began to smile again, wider this time. "Fascinating," she whispered. "Absolutely fascinating." Princess Zaraketh walked in a slow circle around Jake, studying him like a scientist examining a new discovery. Her purple eyes never left his face as she moved. "In 3,000 years of life," she said, "I have conquered 47 worlds. I have seen thousands of species kneel before the might of our empire. Yet you, a mere infant by our measure, stand here and defy me." Jake tried not to show his shock at her age. 3,000 years. The entire history of human spaceflight was only a few centuries old. "Your people have spirit," the princess continued, "but spirit alone cannot save them from orbital bombardment." "Maybe not," Jake said. "But it's better than living as slaves." The princess stopped walking and faced him directly. "Slaves? Is that what you think we want? Isn't it?" She was quiet for a moment, then clapped her hands twice. The guards moved back to give them space. "Walk with me, Jake Morrison. I wish to show you something." They left the throne room and entered another corridor. This one had transparent walls that showed the space outside the ship. Jake could see New Terra in the distance, a blue and green jewel against the black of space. "Beautiful, is it not?" the princess asked. "Your people chose well." This world has everything needed for a thriving civilization. So you want to take it from us? I want to understand you, she corrected. Your species puzzles me. You are young, weak, and technologically primitive. Yet everywhere we encounter humans, you surprise us. They stopped at a viewing chamber with chairs that adjusted themselves to Jake's human body as soon as he sat down. The princess took the seat across from him. 3 years ago, she said, we found a human trading ship that had been attacked by space pirates. The ship was crippled, the crew outnumbered 10-1. By all logic, they should have surrendered or died. Jake waited for her to continue. Instead, they jury-rigged their damaged weapons and destroyed 4 pirate ships before help arrived. One of my admirals studied the wreckage. He said their modifications should have been impossible with their level of technology. Humans are good at making things work, Jake said. Yes, but why? The princess leaned forward. We Zephyrians have science your people cannot imagine. We live for millennia and accumulate vast knowledge. Yet in 3,000 years, I have never seen anyone accomplish what you did with that shuttle in a single day. Before Jake could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the ship. A voice spoke in the musical Zephyrian language, and the princess stood quickly. What's happening? Jake asked. Your people are more foolish than I hoped, she replied. They have launched an attack against our smallest scout ship. The viewing chamber's walls became display screens showing the space around New Terra. Jake could see human fighters swarming around one of the alien vessels. The tiny ships looked like insects attacking a giant. They can't win, Jake said, his heart sinking. No, they cannot. The princess touched a control panel, and her voice was transmitted to the human fighters. Brave pilots of New Terra, cease your attack immediately. You are outmatched and will be destroyed if you continue. The response came back in Danny's voice. This is Major Morrison of the New Terra Defense Force. Release our captured pilot and withdraw from our system. Princess Zaraketh looked at Jake with raised eyebrows. Your brother, I assume? Yes. He has your courage, if not your wisdom. She touched the panel again. Major Morrison, your pilot is unharmed and is my guest. Continue your attack, and I will be forced to defend my ships. You have 1 minute to release him, Danny replied. After that, we're coming for you. The princess sighed. Your species truly does not understand the concept of self-preservation. Jake watched the human fighters regroup for another attack. They were brave, but their weapons could barely scratch the alien ship's shields. In a real fight, they would all die in seconds. Please, Jake said, call off your ships. Don't hurt them. I am not the one who needs to make that choice, the princess replied. That was when she did something that shocked everyone watching. Princess Zaraketh activated the ship's main communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies to both the human fleet and her own ships. I am Princess Zaraketh, heir to the Crimson Throne of the Zephyrian Empire, her voice rang out across space. By the ancient laws of our people, I invoke the right of claiming. Silence filled the communication channels. Even the Zephyrian ships seemed to stop moving. The princess pointed directly at Jake. I claim this human, Jake Morrison, as my ward and student. He will come with me to learn the ways of our people and serve the Empire. What? Jake stood up so fast his chair fell over. You can't just claim me like I'm a piece of property. The right of claiming is sacred law, the princess explained calmly. When a member of the royal family sees exceptional potential in a member of a lesser species, that individual may be claimed for the good of the empire. Lesser species? Jake's anger flared. Who are you calling lesser? Your entire civilization could not build one ship like this one, she replied. Your people live for mere decades while we live for millennia. By any measure, you are the lesser species. But I can refuse, right? Jake demanded. A small smile crossed the princess's face. Of course, the claimed individual has the right to prove themselves unworthy through trial by combat. If you succeed in 3 challenges, you will be released and granted safe passage home. Jake's mind raced. This was obviously a trap, but it might also be an opportunity. And if I fail? Then you become my ward, bound to serve the Empire until I release you, or until your short human life comes to its natural end. The communication system crackled with Danny's voice. Jake? Jake, are you hearing this? Don't do it. It's a trick. Jake looked out at the human fighters, still hovering near the alien scout ship. Then he looked at Princess Zaraketh, studying her purple eyes for any sign of deception. If I accept your challenge, he said slowly, what happens to New Terra? The colony will be spared during the trial period, she replied. No harm will come to your people while the challenges take place. And if I win, you and 1 ship will be allowed to leave safely. Jake noticed she didn't mention what would happen to the colony if he won. That probably meant the Zephyrians would still take over New Terra, but at least the trials would buy his people time to prepare or evacuate. I accept, Jake said. The princess's smile widened. Excellent. The first trial will begin tomorrow. She touched her communication panel again. Major Morrison, your brother has accepted my challenge. The trials will determine his fate and that of your colony. I suggest you use this time wisely. Danny's response was immediate. Jake, don't trust her. We're coming to get you. No, Jake said, activating his own communication link. Danny, listen to me. Take the fleet home. Prepare the colony defenses and get ready to evacuate civilians if necessary. I'm not leaving you with these aliens. You have to, Jake insisted. This is our only chance to save everyone. After a long pause, Danny replied, Fine, but Jake, win those trials. The human fighters turned and flew back toward New Terra, leaving Jake alone on the alien ship with Princess Zaraketh and her crew. Your brother cares for you, the princess observed. All humans care for each other, Jake replied. That's something your people might not understand. Perhaps not, she agreed. But that is precisely why you interest me so much. As Jake watched his home planet grow smaller in the viewing chamber, he wondered if he had just saved his people or doomed them all. Only the trials would tell. The princess stood to leave. Rest well. Jake Morrison, tomorrow you will face the first challenge, and I am very curious to see what other surprises your species has in store for us. Alone in the vast chamber, Jake stared out at the stars and tried to prepare himself for whatever was coming next. He had volunteered for a reconnaissance mission and ended up as the prisoner of an alien princess. His grandmother always said that life was full of surprises. This was definitely not the kind of surprise she had in mind. Jake spent his first night aboard the alien ship in a room that was larger than his entire apartment back on New Terra. The walls showed a slow-moving display of distant galaxies, and the bed adjusted itself to his body temperature. Despite the comfort, he barely slept. In the morning, guards came to escort him to the first trial. They led him through corridors he had not seen before, past rooms filled with technology that seemed to work by magic rather than science. The trial chamber was enormous, with tiered seating that held hundreds of Zephyrian observers. Princess Zaraketh sat on a raised platform, wearing different robes that seemed to be made of liquid silver. Jake Morrison, her voice echoed through the chamber, you will face 3 challenges to prove your worth. The first tests your physical capability against our finest warriors. A doorway opened in the arena floor, and 3 Zephyrian soldiers emerged. They were taller than the princess, with broader shoulders and arms that looked like they could crush stone. Their armor gleamed like mirrors, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. The rules are simple, the princess continued. Defeat all 3 warriors, or prove that you cannot be easily conquered. You may use any method you choose, but you must achieve victory through your own efforts. Jake stepped into the arena, feeling very small and very human. The Zephyrians were faster, stronger, and better armed. In a straight fight, he would lose in seconds. But Jake had never believed in straight fights. The first warrior charged at him, energy sword raised high. Jake dove to one side and rolled behind a piece of arena equipment. The warrior's sword sliced through the air where Jake's head had been. "Running will not save you, human," the warrior called out. Jake studied the arena while dodging the next attack. The floor was made of metal plates with gaps between them. Energy conduits ran underneath, probably powering the lights and displays. The second warrior joined the attack, forcing Jake to keep moving. Their coordination was perfect, cutting off his escape routes and herding him toward the center of the arena. That was when Jake noticed something interesting about their armor. It was beautiful and strong, but it was also highly conductive. The metal gleamed because it was designed to channel and redirect energy attacks. Jake pulled a small tool from his pocket, one the guards had not bothered to take from him. It was just a simple circuit tester used for checking electrical systems. But in the right hands, even simple tools could be dangerous. The third warrior moved to surround him, and Jake knew he was running out of time. He dropped to his knees and pried open one of the metal floor plates. "What are you doing?" the first warrior demanded. "Something your people probably never taught you," Jake replied. He jammed his circuit tester into the energy conduit below the floor. Sparks flew as the conduit overloaded. The electrical surge traveled through the arena's metal floor, looking for the easiest path to ground. It found that path through the warrior's highly conductive armor. All three Zephyrians collapsed as electricity coursed through their bodies. Their armor, designed to handle energy weapons, had no protection against a simple electrical overload. The arena fell silent. Princess Zaraketh stood up from her throne, staring down at Jake with an expression of pure amazement. "How?" she asked. "Your technology is impressive," Jake said, helping one of the fallen warriors to his feet. "But it's so advanced that you've forgotten about simple solutions. Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ones." The princess nodded slowly. "The first trial is complete. You have passed." Over the next few days, Jake learned more about Zephyrian society while preparing for the second trial. The aliens lived in a rigid hierarchy where everyone knew their exact place. Innovation was discouraged because their science was already considered perfect. "We have spent millennia perfecting our knowledge," explained Dr. Veltar, the ship's chief scientist. "Why would we need to change what already works perfectly?" "Because perfection is boring," Jake replied, "and because there's always a better way to do something." The doctor looked at him as if he had spoken nonsense. This attitude, Jake realized, was exactly why the princess was interested in humans. Her people had become so advanced that they had stopped learning. The second trial took place in the ship's main laboratory. Princess Zaraketh presented Jake with a damaged piece of Zephyrian technology, a complex device covered in crystalline circuits and flowing energy patterns. "This is a quantum field generator," she explained. "It creates the shields that protect our ships. This one was damaged in a recent battle. Our best technicians say it cannot be repaired without completely rebuilding it from scratch." Jake examined the device carefully. The crystals were cracked, and several energy pathways had been severed. By human standards, it was incredibly complex. By Zephyrian standards, it was apparently irreparable. "What exactly does it do?" Jake asked. "It manipulates quantum fields to create barriers in space," Dr. Veltar answered. "The mathematics involved are beyond your species' comprehension." "Maybe," Jake said. "But I don't need to understand the math to fix the hardware." He spent hours studying the device, tracing energy pathways and examining the crystal matrices. Slowly, he began to see the pattern. The Zephyrians had designed it to work perfectly, but they had no backup systems for when parts failed. Jake found a toolkit in the laboratory and began working. He bypassed the damaged crystals by creating new pathways with simple wire connections. Where energy conduits had been severed, he bridged them with basic electrical components. The Zephyrian technicians watched in horror as he added crude human technology to their perfect device. "You cannot mix primitive components with quantum crystals," Dr. Veltar protested. "It will never function properly." "Want to bet?" Jake connected the last wire and activated the device. The quantum field generator hummed to life, its energy patterns flowing smoothly around Jake's improvised repairs. The shield it created was not as elegant as the original design, but it worked just as well. "Impossible," Dr. Veltar whispered. "Imperfect," Jake corrected. "But sometimes imperfect solutions are better than perfect problems." Princess Zaraketh studied the repaired device with fascination. "You have taught my scientists something new today." "I hope so," Jake replied, "because learning new things is what keeps life interesting." The princess announced that Jake had passed the second trial. But instead of relief, Jake felt growing concern. He was succeeding too easily, and he suspected the princess was letting him win. That night, she visited his quarters alone, without guards or ceremony. She looked tired, and for the first time, Jake saw uncertainty in her purple eyes. "Why are you really doing this?" he asked. She sat down across from him, her silver robes pooling around her feet. "My people are dying, Jake Morrison." "You look pretty healthy to me." "Not physically," she explained. "Spiritually, intellectually. We have become so perfect that we have stopped growing. Our young people are born into a world where everything has already been discovered, every problem already solved." Jake began to understand. "You're looking for something new. We have been expanding our empire for centuries, conquering other species and studying their technologies, but we never find anything truly innovative. Most civilizations either copy our methods or develop crude variations of what we already know. But humans are different." The princess nodded. "Everywhere we encounter your people, you do the impossible. You take our technology and improve it in ways we never considered. You solve problems we thought were unsolvable. So you want to study us like laboratory animals." "I want to learn from you," she corrected. "But my people will never accept that a lesser species could teach them anything. That is why I invoked the right of claiming. It was the only way to bring a human into our society." Jake stared at her. "You planned this whole thing." "I have been studying human colonies for years, looking for the right individual. Someone young enough to adapt to our culture, but skilled enough to demonstrate human potential. And you chose me. You modified that shuttle in ways that should have been impossible with your resources. When you were captured, you showed no fear. When I threatened you, you stood your ground. You are exactly what I hoped to find." Jake felt a strange mix of anger and admiration. "You manipulated everything." "Yes," the princess admitted. "But the trials are real, and your victories were earned. You have already proven my theories correct." "What about the third trial?" Princess Zaraketh was quiet for a long moment. "The third trial will be different. It will test something that my people have forgotten how to do." "Which is?" "Lead others who are not like yourself." Jake had a feeling that the hardest challenge was still ahead, but looking at the princess, he also realized that she was taking just as big a risk as he was. If her plan failed, she would face the anger of her entire civilization. "What happens if I pass all 3 trials?" he asked. "Then you will have the right to refuse my claim and return home." "And what happens to you?" The princess smiled sadly. "Then I will have to find another way to save my people from themselves." Jake understood now that this was never really about him. It was about 2 civilizations that needed each other more than they realized. The question was whether he could find a way to help both his people and hers. The third trial would tell. The third trial began 3 days later in a massive chamber that could have held a small city. Princess Zara Keth stood before an assembly of both humans and Zephyrians, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "Jake Morrison," she announced, "your final challenge is to demonstrate leadership. You will command a mixed unit in a simulated battle scenario. Success requires victory achieved through cooperation between species." Jake looked at his assigned team with growing concern. 10 humans had been brought from New Terra, including his brother Danny and Amy Cooper. They stood uneasily next to 10 Zephyrian soldiers who looked down at them with obvious disdain. "The simulation will test your ability to unite different peoples toward a common goal," the princess continued. "Your opponents will be our finest military strategists, commanding superior forces with advanced technology." Danny moved close to Jake. "This has to be a trap," he whispered. "They brought us here to make you fail." "Maybe," Jake replied, studying the Zephyrians on his team. "Or maybe the princess is giving me exactly what I need to succeed." The simulation began in a virtual environment that felt completely real. Jake's mixed team found themselves defending a space station against overwhelming enemy forces. The attacking ships outnumbered them 3-1, and their weapons were far more advanced. "Standard defensive positions," ordered Captain Mordun, the senior Zephyrian officer. "We will hold the main corridor while the humans guard the secondary passages." "Wait," Jake said. "I'm supposed to be in command here." The captain looked at him with barely concealed contempt. "You are a child. I have commanded fleets for longer than your entire species has existed." The other Zephyrians murmured agreement, while the humans bristled at the insult. Jake could see his team falling apart before the battle even started. "You're right," Jake said calmly. "You have more experience than I do. But experience with what? Fighting the same battles the same way for centuries?" "Our methods have proven effective," Captain Mordun replied. "Against enemies who fight like you do," Jake agreed. "But what about enemies who don't follow your rules?" Before the captain could respond, the enemy forces began their assault. Simulation or not, the energy beams and explosions felt real enough to make everyone take cover. Jake watched the attack pattern and quickly realized that the enemy was using standard Zephyrian tactics, just with better weapons. They were attacking in orderly waves, targeting the strongest defensive positions first. "Danny," Jake called out, "remember the Cygnus raid from last year?" His brother grinned. "The one where we let pirates think they were winning?" "Exactly." Jake turned to the Zephyrians. "Captain Mordun, I need you to hold the main corridor as planned, but when I give the signal, I want you to fall back in apparent retreat." "Retreat?" The captain looked horrified. "Zephyrian soldiers do not retreat." "They will today," Jake said firmly. "Amy, take half the humans and set up in the engineering section. Make it look like we're protecting something important." "What are we actually doing?" she asked. "Creating a trap," Jake explained quickly. "The enemy will think they're winning and push forward to capture our critical systems. When they do, we'll hit them from 3 directions at once." The Zephyrian soldiers looked skeptical, but Captain Mordun grudgingly agreed to follow orders. The battle resumed with both sides taking heavy casualties. "Now!" Jake ordered. "Fall back!" The Zephyrian soldiers retreated down the main corridor, just as the enemy forces pushed forward in pursuit. Amy's team made a show of desperately defending the engineering section, drawing more enemy attention. Meanwhile, Jake led a small team through maintenance shafts that the enemy had ignored. They emerged behind the attacking forces just as Danny's Marines hit them from the side. The enemy, caught between 3 groups and unable to retreat, was quickly defeated. The simulation ended with Jake's team victorious despite being outnumbered and outgunned. Captain Mordun approached Jake as the virtual environment faded away. "How did you know that would work?" "Because the enemy expected us to fight like Zephyrians," Jake explained. "Honor, tradition, standard tactics. They weren't prepared for humans who fight dirty." "Fighting dirty is dishonorable." one of the other Zephyrian soldiers protested. Dead is dead, Danny replied bluntly. Honor doesn't matter much when you're floating in space. Princess Zaraketh stepped forward before the argument could escalate. The trial is complete. Jake Morrison has demonstrated exceptional leadership by combining the strengths of both species. But Jake wasn't finished. With respect, Princess, this trial proves something else entirely. Every eye in the chamber focused on him. It proves that your people and mine don't have to be enemies. We're stronger together than either of us is alone. Explain, the princess commanded. Jake gestured toward his mixed team. Your soldiers have discipline, advanced training, and powerful weapons. My people have adaptability, creativity, and the willingness to try new approaches. Put them together and you get something neither side could achieve alone. The human makes a valid point, Captain Mordun admitted reluctantly. His tactics were effective. More than effective, Jake continued. If your empire is really stagnating like you said, then you need people who think differently. And if humanity is going to survive in a galaxy full of advanced civilizations, we need allies who can teach us. Princess Zaraketh studied Jake for a long moment. You have passed all 3 trials and earned the right to refuse my claim. What is your decision? Jake looked at his brother, then at Amy, then at the Zephyrian soldiers who had fought beside them. I refuse your claim, as written. Disappointed murmurs rose from the Zephyrian observers, but Jake held up his hand for silence. However, he continued, I propose something different, not a claim of ownership, but a partnership of equals. What do you mean? The princess asked. Let me come with you to the Zephyrian homeworld as an ambassador, not as your property. Let me help your people remember how to innovate and grow. In exchange, help my people learn from your advanced science. That is not how our laws work, protested Admiral Kethvar, one of the princess's advisors. Lesser species do not negotiate with the Empire. They submit or they are conquered. Then maybe it's time to change your laws, Jake said boldly. The chamber erupted in angry voices from both sides. The Zephyrians were outraged at the suggestion that their ancient laws could be wrong. The humans were suspicious of any deal that involved Jake leaving with the aliens. Princess Zaraketh raised her hand for silence. This proposal has merit, she said, but it would require approval from the Imperial Council. And if they refuse, Danny demanded. Then we return to the original situation, the princess replied. Jake refuses my claim and is free to leave, but your colony will still face conquest. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. His people were depending on him to find a solution, but the princess was offering him a chance to do something much larger. There's one more thing, he said. If I'm going to be an ambassador, I can't be the only human voice your people hear. I want to bring a small team with me. Absolutely not, Admiral Kethvar snapped. One human was already too many. Actually, Princess Zaraketh said thoughtfully, a small embassy might be exactly what we need. How many humans are you thinking? Jake looked around the chamber. 5. A doctor, an engineer, a soldier, a scientist, and a diplomat. I know who you want to bring, Amy said quietly. And I'm honored. But Jake, this is dangerous. We don't know if we can trust them. We don't, Jake agreed. But sometimes you have to take risks to change things. Danny stepped forward. If you're going, little brother, then I'm going too. Someone has to watch your back. The proposal has merit, Princess Zaraketh said. But first, we must deal with a more immediate problem. Warning alarms suddenly filled the chamber. A Zephyrian officer ran up to the princess and spoke rapidly in their musical language. What's happening? Jake asked. Princess Zaraketh's face was grim. Admiral Kethvar has convinced half my fleet that I have been compromised by human influence. They are preparing to attack New Terra with or without my orders. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Jake realized that his trials had been the easy part. The real challenge was just beginning. "How long do we have?" Danny asked. "Perhaps 6 hours before they reach your planet," the princess replied. Jake felt everything he had worked for slipping away. But then he looked at the mixed group of humans and Zephyrians who had fought together in the simulation. "Then we better get to work," he said. "Time to see if this partnership really works." Admiral Kethvar's voice echoed through the ship's communication system as his rebels prepared for battle. "Princess Zara Keth has been corrupted by human influence," he announced. "For the good of the Empire, I am taking command of this fleet." Jake watched through the viewing chamber as 6 Zephyrian warships broke formation and moved toward New Terra. Their weapons were already charging, ready to bombard his home from orbit. "How many ships do we still have?" he asked. 6 loyal to me," Princess Zara Keth replied grimly. "Equal numbers. But Kethavar commands our finest battle cruiser. And the humans on New Terra are completely outmatched," Danny said bluntly. "Our planetary defenses might stop 1 ship if we're lucky. Against 6, we don't stand a chance." Jake studied the tactical display, his mind racing through possibilities. "What if we don't have to fight all 6 at once?" "Explain," the princess ordered. "Admiral Kethvar thinks he's fighting 2 separate enemies," Jake said. "Rebellious humans and a corrupted princess. But what if we prove to his forces that we're actually working together?" Captain Mordun, who had stayed loyal to the princess, shook his head. "That will only convince them that you are right. Humans and Zephyrians fighting as one. They will see it as proof that we have been contaminated." "Good," Jake replied. "Let them think that. While they're trying to figure out how to fight an enemy they don't understand, we'll be hitting them where they're not prepared." Princess Zaraketh began to smile. "You want to use their prejudices against them." "Exactly. They think humans are weak and primitive. They think Zephyrians who work with humans are compromised. They won't expect us to be effective." The next few hours were a desperate race against time. Jake worked with both human and Zephyrian engineers to modify their ships for combined operations. Amy coordinated medical teams that could treat both species. Danny and Captain Mordun planned joint military operations. But the most important work was done by Princess Zaraketh herself. She contacted every ship in her fleet, speaking directly to their crews about what she had learned from the humans. "For centuries, we have conquered other species without truly understanding them," she told her people. "We have become so certain of our superiority that we stopped learning. But these humans have shown me something we have forgotten." On the main display, Jake could see the rebel fleet approaching New Terra. They would be in weapons range within 2 hours. "Princess," came a transmission from one of the loyal ships. "Commander Velnara requests permission to join the human embassy program." Princess Zaraketh looked surprised. "Commander Velnara has served with distinction for 4 centuries. Why would she want to work with humans?" "Because," the commander's voice replied, "if a 20-year-old human can solve problems that our best scientists could not, then perhaps we have something to learn." Similar requests came from other ships. Not everyone was convinced, but enough Zephyrians were curious about human methods that Princess Zaraketh had volunteers for her new program. Admiral Kethvar's response was swift and angry. "Any Zephyrian who cooperates with the human contamination will be considered a traitor to the Empire." That declaration turned out to be his first mistake. By labeling cooperation as treason, he forced his own people to choose sides. Many who had been undecided now moved to support the princess. "3 ships have just changed sides," reported the tactical officer. "Admiral Kethavar now commands only 3 vessels." But those 3 ships were still more than enough to destroy New Terra. Jake knew they had to act fast. "Princess, I need you to take your fleet and attack the rebels directly," he said. "That will leave your planet undefended," she pointed out. "No, it won't," Jake turned to Danny. How fast can you get a message to New Terra? 30 seconds if I use the emergency channel. Tell Commander Carter to launch every ship they have. Not to fight, but to evacuate as many people as possible. Danny looked confused. Jake, our cargo ships can't outrun Zephyrian warships. They don't have to outrun them. They just have to confuse them. Jake's plan was simple, but risky. While Princess Zaraketh attacked the rebel fleet directly, the civilian ships from New Terra would launch in all directions. The rebels would have to choose between fighting the princess or chasing down the evacuation ships. What about the people left on the planet? Amy asked. They'll hide in the underground shelters, Jake replied. Admiral Kethvar wants to make an example of New Terra, but he won't waste time bombing empty cities. The battle began as both fleets engaged each other near New Terra's moon. Princess Zaraketh's ships used combined human and Zephyrian tactics, hitting the rebels with unpredictable attack patterns. Jake watched from the bridge as his plan unfolded. The rebel ships were powerful, but they had to divide their attention between the princess's fleet and the escaping civilian vessels. Admiral Kethvar is trying to pursue the evacuation ships, reported the tactical officer. Good, Jake said. Signal our people to split up even more. Make him chase them all over the system. But Kethvar was too experienced to be completely fooled. He ordered one ship to continue the pursuit, while the other two focused on destroying the princess's fleet. The battle was fierce, with energy beams lighting up space around New Terra. Jake could see that both sides were taking heavy damage. Princess, he said urgently, we need to end this quickly. I am open to suggestions, she replied while dodging another enemy attack. Jake studied the tactical display, looking for any advantage they could use. That was when he noticed something interesting about the rebel ship's formation. They're protecting Admiral Kethvar's flagship, he realized. The other ships are staying close to shield him from attack. Standard defensive formation, Captain Morden confirmed. Which means they're thinking like traditional Zephyrians, Jake said. Danny, can your people get close to that flagship? Not in our fighters. We'd be destroyed before we got within weapons range. Who said anything about weapons? Jake smiled. Remember what we learned in the simulation. Sometimes the best attack is the one your enemy doesn't expect. Jake's new plan required the human evacuation ships to stop running and instead fly directly toward the battle. It seemed like suicide, but Jake was counting on Admiral Kethvar's prejudices. The Admiral would see primitive human cargo ships approaching his mighty warships and assume they posed no threat. He would be wrong. All human vessels, Jake broadcast on the emergency channel, implement ramming protocols. The civilian ships weren't armed, but they were solid and determined. Instead of trying to fight the Zephyrian ships with weapons, they simply flew straight at them. Admiral Kethvar's forces suddenly found themselves dealing with dozens of ships willing to sacrifice themselves to stop the rebels. The Zephyrian vessels had to break formation to avoid collisions, leaving the flagship exposed. Princess Zaraketh took advantage immediately, launching a concentrated attack on Kethvar's ship. With his shields weakened and his escort ships scattered, the Admiral's flagship took critical damage. Admiral Kethvar, the princess transmitted, surrender now and I will spare your crews. The reply came back filled with rage. I will not surrender to humans and their collaborators. That was his second mistake. By refusing to surrender, Kethvar gave Princess Zaraketh the legal authority to declare him a traitor to the Empire. All ships, she announced. Admiral Kethvar has been relieved of command for treason. Any crew member who continues to follow his orders will share his fate. One by one, the rebel ships powered down their weapons and requested permission to surrender. Even Kethvar's own crew abandoned him rather than be labeled traitors. Within an hour, the battle was over. Admiral Kethvar was in custody, and the threat to New Terra had ended. But Jake knew the real work was just beginning. 6 months later, he stood on the observation deck of a new type of ship, one built by both human and Zephyrian engineers working together. The vessel was heading toward the Zephyrian homeworld, carrying the first official embassy between their peoples. Amy had agreed to serve as the chief medical officer, bringing human healing techniques to complement Zephyrian medical science. Danny commanded the security team, training both species to work together. Captain Morden served as military advisor, learning human tactics while teaching Zephyrian strategy. Princess Zara Keth joined Jake at the viewing window as they approached her home system. The Imperial Council is still debating whether to accept your embassy program. And if they refuse, Jake asked. Then we will find another way, she replied. You have already proven that cooperation works better than conquest. Jake looked out at the stars ahead. You know, when I modified that shuttle 6 months ago, I never imagined it would lead to this. Neither did I, the princess admitted. But perhaps that is the most human trait of all, the ability to create futures that no one could predict. As their ship approached the Zephyrian capital, Jake reflected on everything that had changed. He was no longer the youngest member of New Terra's defense force. He was an ambassador representing not just his planet, but his entire species. The alien princess had pointed to him and said he would be hers. But in the end, they had both belonged to something larger than either of them could have imagined. They belonged to the future they were building together, one where different species could learn from each other instead of trying to conquer each other. It was a future that would require work, patience, and understanding from both sides. But Jake had learned that humans were very good at building impossible futures, and now they had partners who were willing to help them do it.